In today's tutorial, we'll take a look at how to use Adobe Illustrator to make texture maps that automatically update in your 3D software. This is especially handy if you really need to control fonts, colors, and gradients, and be able to globally change them across all texture maps. So the first step after you have your 3D objects is inside the 3D software, determine the rectangular size of each of the texture maps that you'll need. This will be different depending on which software you're using. I'm using Cinema 4D, so it's very easy, whether they are primitives or editable meshes, to get the correct size. Next, let's just make some mock-up fake textures that will map to each of the surfaces, and then once we have our texture maps, we'll assign our texture maps to each of these. So just go in and name them something that you can keep tabs on, and we'll use similar naming structure when we get into Illustrator, so it's easy to update the correct texture and then map them to the 3D object. So then quickly just assign the 3 materials, or however many materials you have. Obviously, save often. One more time, just double check the sizes that you'll need. You can always jump between the programs to be able to do this if you have multiple textures you need to make. And then we'll jump over to Illustrator and we'll open a document and use whatever units you want to. I'm going to stick to inches. If you have CAD tools for Adobe Illustrator, you can actually probably build these at the actual scaled size, but I'm just going to create some proportional elements out of each of these artboards that'll serve as the basis for each texture map. So create each of these at the proportional size. Next, you'll want to save the Illustrator file and pick a file name that relates to your 3D project file, and keep in mind that the file name will appear in the name of the JPEG or PNG files that you export to use as texture maps. Be sure to keep it short. In case you're on a Windows machine, you don't want to run into the character limit for the file path. And then we can start to just kind of mock up our textures. For this one, I'll label each of them A, B, and C to match the texture names that I used in the Cinema 4D file. Next is you want to go into each individual artboard in the Properties menu and name each of those so they match or correlate to the texture names that you have in your 3D software. And this will make it easier when it comes time to update a texture here in Illustrator, or when we're initially assigning the texture maps in your 3D software. And then quickly, just to show how these map, I'm going to throw some gradients on these and change the colors of some of the text blocks. Then once you have your textures ready, we'll go to Export As. Pick your file format and be sure to check Use Artboards, and that'll save it out as the Illustrator file name and then the artboard name. Also select RGB so that the textures don't give you any CMYK trouble. And then once the export is complete, jump back over to your 3D software program and assign each of those exported textures to the diffuse channel of the correlating material. And if you make changes in Illustrator, you just run the export as again. And again, be sure to check Use Artboards and then Export. It'll ask you again to switch between RGB and CMYK. And of course, you want to save over the files. So then when you return to your 3D software, you can just hit update all textures, and it will update all of those texture maps automatically for you anytime you make a change or export from Illustrator. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, check out more of our content at experientialideas.com.